Let's have a war! Now everyone knew a big war was happening soon. France wanted some things that Germany took away from it. Germany wanted more of everyone's stuff. These two empires thought they were very cool, but a lot of ethnic people didn't think so. And some of them have even been declaring independent with help from Russia. And everyone was talking about each other behind their back. Everyone was eager to beat each other up. In this area of Austria-Hungary, there were some Saracen Bosnians who hated to live in this part of Austria-Hungary. Archduke of Austria-Hungary goes there for a nice drive. He got assassinated. Assassin threw a bomb, but they missed it. Hit off. They go hide in a bush and come back later to visit some injured officers. The driver makes a wrong turn, and by coincidence, they get by the failed assassin and gets shot. Austria-Hungary was, of course, mad about this, and they think Serbia had to do that. Maybe they might have. So they go to their pal Germany and they say, hey, we're going to declare war on Serbia. Germany's like, go for it. Austria-Hungary send a list of impossible demands to Serbia, and then when they say no, they declare war on them. Austria and Germany are friends, and Serbia is protected by Russia, which is friends with France, and they all declare war on each other. Montenegro joins the left. France and Britain have a kind of alliance. And when France says, do you got my back? Well, and then Britain's like, maybe. Then they stay out of it, which is great news for Germany because they have a plan. They know Russia is big and clumsy, so it'll take long for war. They would send all their troops into France when Russia's getting ready. Defeat France, then move all the troops to Russia and defeat Russia. One problem, France has loads of forts and defenses along its German border. Germany can't waste any time fighting them, so Germany decides to go around them. Through Belgium! Belgium is neutral, but Germany wants to march 750,000 troops through it to get around France's defenses. They're hoping Belgium would just kind of sit down. Belgium fights back, and they're pretty good, so they slow down the Germans. Even worse for Germany is Britain shows up and they're pretty mad that Germany's invading neutral countries. So now Britain declares war on Germany. So Germany pushed on through Belgium and commits some atrocities along the way. The Allies have a propaganda, and this starts having influence around the world, notably in America. Russia's ready for war, and way earlier than expected. Germany has to send some troops back to the east to defend against the Russians. In the Western Front, Germany continued advancing and are in sight of Paris. But then things started to go wrong. The French commander-in-chief knew something had to be done. He orders his armies to stop retreating. In the resulting battle, a gap opened up in the German lines. So the German armies had to retreat. Both sides stuck in a hard stalemate. They knew this war wasn't going to be about taking territory, but simply wearing each other down. The Allies had plenty of men to expand from its overseas dominions. Britain also started a naval blockade, so Germany could import stuff like food. Neither side wanted a grueling war, so they both thought of ways to break the deadlock on the Western Front, like new frontiers. When the war first broke out, Australia was quick to take German New Guinea. The Allies also quickly jumped on Germany's colonies in Africa, and particularly in German East Africa. Some new combats entered the war as well. The Allies' new friends are Italy and Japan. Italy actually had alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary before the war. But after some tense relationships, then the Allies promising to give them some stuff of Austria-Hungary stuff, they switched sides. Italy opened a new font in the mountains, but like everyone else, they were in a stalemate for most of the war. The Central Power's new friend was the struggling empire in the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans entering into the war was a particular concern to Britain, since the Middle East was full of oil and Britain wanted all of that oil. First, the Ottomans tried attacking Russia in the Caucasus Mountains, but they weren't prepared for the cold and many of them froze to death. The Ottomans blamed their internal losses on the ethnic Armenians living within Ottoman territory. Then the Germans sent spies into Afghanistan. All these new frontiers hadn't done much to change the war. Before the war, there was a big conference that set out the rules of modern warfare. No chemical weapons, no killing civilians. Basically, don't be jerks. The Germans held a meeting and decided to be jerks. Meanwhile, Austria-Hungary still haven't dealt with Serbia. So the Central Powers enlisted some help. Bulgaria wished it was bigger and was still bitter about losing the Second Balkan War. The Central Powers promised to make all Bulgaria's wildest dreams come true if they helped, so they agreed. And together they knocked out Serbia. The Serbian troops retreated through Albania, which was neutral but had some ties to Austria-Hungary. So Austria-Hungary entered Albania in a friendly invasion to chase down the Serbians. Many of them escaped by sea. It's 1916 and a lot's happening. As if they didn't have enough enemies already, Germany added one more, Portugal. Portugal has been getting a little friendly with the Allies behind the scenes, and Germany did not like that one bit. The longest and one of the bloodiest battles of the war started. When the Germans launched an attack around the French city of Verdun, the French defended it desperately, causing thousands of casualties. Under pressure, the French called on its allies to do something to draw the Germans' attention away. The Russians had been getting pushed back and back further and further into their own territory. But because the France called for help, they began a huge offensive. And they did really well until they ran out of supplies and got stuck. Seeing how well the Russians did, Romania decided now would be a great time to jump in and win the war. And they got pounded. The Greeks were fighting among themselves about whether to join the war or not. The king liked the Central Powers, while the prime minister wanted to join the Allies. After a brief national schism during which the war country split to two, the king finally left and the country finally reunited. With Allied help, they began a new offensive. By the time 1917 rolled around, everyone was exhausted. There was no clear winner, and it was still anyone's war. The only question now was who's gonna break first? And the answer was Russia. Tired of not eating and mad that as a crazy match of homeless guy was calling some of the shots, there was an uprising in Petrograd, completed with riots and strikes. The riots turned to a full revolution, and the new government overthrew the Tsar. And then a few months later, the Bolsheviks overthrew the new government, and then they pulled Russia out of the war. This is great news for Germany that now only had to focus on the Western Front. One problem though, the United States of America was looking increasingly like it was going to join the war. So Germany sent a telegram to Mexico saying, "Wouldn't it be crazy cool you guys attacked America?" But the British intercepted the messages, showed it to the Americans, and that was the final straw. American troops were heading towards Europe. This was terrible news for Germany, and they knew their only hope now was to force France and UK to surrender. Before the fresh American troops arrived, it was now or never. So they started one final attack. They traversed their troops and hit hard at the sun. They hit a second time for the north, then again and again. With each hit, the Germans were spending more and more resources, while the Allies were getting better and better at repelling their attacks. By the fifth punch, the Allies held the line, even pushed back. The Allies launched a counterattack, and that was it. The Central Powers were being pushed back on all fronts. Bulgaria collapsed first, followed by the Ottoman Empire. Then Austria-Hungary, and finally on November 11, 1918, at 11 o'clock, Germany surrendered. At the peace treaty, Germany was forced to reduce its military, accept war guilt, and pay the bill for the war. After indescribable suffering and millions dead, the world learned its lesson. For 20 years.